Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Riding the Wave. I'm Mark Healy, the editor-in-chief of the Wave newspaper, Rockaway's newspaper since 1893. And joining us is just one of the best guys that's out there, MC Serch. He is fantastic. Of course, he's a hip hop legend, but he's also, we're very privileged to have him as one of our columnists here at the Wave for Rockaway's own MC Serch. Welcome to the program, Serch.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, boss, Mr. Boss.
Yeah,
can I call you Mr. Boss? My editor-in-chief?
Well, look, I love that we work together. It's like I said, it's an honor to have you on our pages, but it's also great when we get to have these conversations because I know you've got some new stuff cooking, and we wanted to let our readers know, folks that have really responded to your column, to see what's next, what's up for you.
Well, I mean, right now, the thing that's been we're really proud of is the new podcast we just released, Breaking Anonymity, which premiered a couple of weeks back. And a big part of my story is not only my career as an artist, but the fact that it all boils down to me recognizing 11/11/11 that I had a problem. And I had a problem that wasn't just about my drug of choice, but it was more of a problem of identifying my character defects and what led me to addiction, right? So in my journey of recovery, I met a lot of amazing people who suffer from the same disease of addiction that I do. And I met a partner named Kyle Eustice, another writer, someone of your ilk, from Hip Hop DX and writes for Thrasher. And she had approached me about 5 years ago about doing a book about addiction. And I said, maybe not a book, but how about a podcast? And, during the pandemic, we were like, you know what, let's talk to all these people that we've met in our travels and talk to them about their journey through this. And through that, we created this amazing podcast. Kyle has incredible outreach to addicts and musicians. I have my outreach, and season 1 is 10 episodes of just some heartbreaking but really heartfelt and warm stories about guys who reached the top of their careers, hit rock bottom, and then came back up because of a 12-step program in therapy. And I'm really proud of that process, especially for myself.
So, you've always been someone that has, your vision has always been not just about you, but also about empowering others. And I've seen you, limited in limited because we haven't spent a lot of time together. But the time that we have spent together, I see the way that you interact with people. And, for someone who has reached the heights that you have and has been as influential as you have, one of the things I really noticed about you through the way that you work on social media, the way that you network with people, is that you have really taken collaboration to another level. And as you get older and as things change for you, you've been able to collaborate with a lot of different people from a lot of different walks of life. Do you attribute your ability in recovery to that way of working with people and dealing with people on that level?
It's interesting that you think of it that way, because I don't necessarily think those two collaboration points meet, right? Because for the most part, when you talk about the anonymity part of recovery, right? There is the rooms, and then there's the people in the rooms, right? And that group, whether it's Gamblers Anonymous, Overeaters Anonymous, Alcoholics, Narcotics Anonymous, that's about attraction rather than promotion, right? It's one of the edicts in the recovery program. So I don't necessarily think that when I'm communicating with people outside of that, I'm introducing myself as an addict, right? More importantly, I'm trying to give them the more authentic version of myself because I'm working a program, right? However, when people who have known me for a long time recognize a change in me, or people say, wow, how do you see things the way you see things? I'm then able to say, well, a lot of it's because, I went into a 12-step program. I recognized myself as an addict and was able to kind of collect myself and understand that, hey, I got these deficiencies, I got these character defects. I never really paid any attention to them. And it's because I went into a program, not only went into a program, but worked the steps, that I was able to kind of be better at connecting with people. One of the things that made me feel like it was imperative to do this podcast, not only because of the opioid epidemic and the amount of people that have died over the pandemic, because isolation is one of the worst things that an addict can suffer, right? When you're in an isolated situation like a pandemic where you can't leave your house, the opioid epidemic just became a pandemic within the COVID-19 pandemic. And I really felt like with the outreach that we have in Anonymous and all the isms with Zoom meetings around the world, I wanted people to at least hear from artists and athletes that they respected, whether it's Royce the 5'9", who has an amazing episode of working with Eminem, and how when M got clean, he went to Royce and said, hey, brother, I think you got a problem. You might need some help, right?
Right.
Instead of getting high together, they got clean together, Flesh and Bone from Bone Thugs, who had to separate himself from his own family and move and leave Bone Thugs in Harmony in order to find his recovery. Havoc from Mobb Deep, like these amazing musicians and artists who not only do I love and respect as musicians, but now I can see a different kind of peel back of their authentic self because of the recovery program. So, a long answer to a very interesting question is, I don't know if the importance of me being an addict helped me connect with people, but it certainly gives me a deeper bond with them and more of a reason to create and produce this podcast in this series.
It's interesting that you chose the podcast as a platform, because I think if you did decide to write a book, you could probably do it pretty well. I mean, I read your column, so, and I edit it. I don't have to do many edits to it. So,
well, I'm also limited in my words. I only get 500 words. Like when I see like the music piece and it's like 1,000 words on an album, I'm like, why don't I get 1,000 words? Where's my 1,000 words? But that's my character defect, right? Like I look at, all of a sudden I'm like my egocentric saying, I was like, wait, I'm fucking MC Serch. Why am I not getting 1,000 words, right? But it's really, again, it's one of those things where, when I'm looking at and I'm in the process, I can share this with you and the audience. I'm in the process of writing my memoir, right? And the storytelling, right? And the part of the storytelling is part of, who you are as an MC. Like it's part of the artistic endeavor as to put out music, right? Is to tell a story that is timeless. Hence the name of our podcast company, which is, Timeless Podcast Company. You want to make music that's not here for, today, just for today. I don't want to make, the twist. I don't want to make the WAP. I don't want to make the Pee Wee Herman. I don't, I want to make When the Levee Breaks. I want to make, songs that last forever and tell stories that last forever. And I want people to come back to Breaking Anonymity and say, wow, this story resonates with me, not only this week, but 10 years from now, because the stigma that's around a 12-step program, oh, that's a cult. Like they change your way of thinking. It's all cap. Like the fact of finding what makes that work is something that is evergreen, meaning that it is something that I want people to go back and find year after year after year when they are or have family that is challenged. And Mark, man, one of the things that is such a blessing in my life is how many people already, just not just on the promos that we put out there, but how people already have reached out to me and said, God bless you for telling your story. My son, suffers. I'm 26 years in recovery. And the other artists that have reached out and said, hey, can I be a part of season 2? I'd love to tell my story and the way you tell it.
I think that part of the attraction or the ability to open up in these kinds of situations, when somebody like yourself is courageous enough to share your personal story, when you have, let's be honest, we all have so much to lose, whether it's our contracts or our business or, what people might say about what you're expressing or what stories that you're telling. There's always something inside, whether it's professional, whether it's personal, that is at stake. And so, for you to embark upon this journey and bring all these people along with you, it really speaks to who you are and what you're all about. If when you get people who reach out, right, and they say, Serch, thank you for sharing your story. This is my story. How do you deal with it? How do you like factor it into what you're doing next? I mean, what kind of interaction do you allow yourself to have with folks that you never heard from before?
That's a great question. I think one of the things that when people, because you asked me really, there's three important parts about this, and I really want to address the other one, which could be potentially an elephant in the room. You said there's a lot to lose. I don't think that exists anymore in today's society. I think that there's actually more to lose when you hide it. I think actually people lose more of their family, their careers, their money, their money, property, and prestige when you hide the fact that you're not dealing with your addiction. I think that for me, and what I've recognized, not only just within the rooms, but society at large, is there's so much more to gain when you get rid of it. And when you say you get rid of it, you never stop being an addict. I'm gonna be an addict forever. I'm just not in active addiction, meaning I'm not using my drug of choice today. What I choose to use is the steps that help me stay away from wanting that, but the other part of it is that I think that there is that misnomer. I wouldn't even call it a stigma, but I think it's a misnomer. I think there's this misnomer that says, oh, if you say you're an addict, look how much you could lose. Like, you could lose your job. I think that's cap, bro. I think that the fact is that when you go into a job or you go into some place and they see that you are a stable individual, that you are working a program, and you can honestly and openly say, I'm like this because I have a service commitment to an anonymity, some sort of an anonymous program. I think you become the person that bosses and that CEOs and that C-level execs say, wow, good for him. Good for him. I know for me, people that knew me, I've been in entertainment for 30 years now. People that knew me when I was 18, 21, 25, 30, they openly and honestly share with me that I'm a much better human being today. I don't necessarily believe I was a bad person. Nori said something funny on Drink Champs when I had mentioned I was an addict. He said, man, I never heard that about you. Like, I never heard you were an asshole. I never heard you were a bad person. I'm like, why I gotta be an asshole because I was an addict? Like, why does that even have to equate? He's like, nah, but I never heard it, I don't think I was ever a bad person. I think that I had bad character traits. I think I had defects of character that were much more obvious than they are today. And I tell people when I tell my story, when I was in active addiction, I had everything. I had the money, the property, the prestige. I had the big house. I had the 4 cars. I had the vacation homes. I had, 7 figures in the bank. I had a healthy 401k. I had a loving family, but I also had this double life. I had the getting and finding ways and means to get more. And when that stopped is when I lost everything. I lost the money, property, prestige, and I had to build it all back. And I had to, recreate myself, reinvent myself. That was the scary part for me in recovery. because I could have easily just said, you know what, bump this. I'm going to just go back to my drug of choice, which kept me in these circles and kept me in this. But the one thing I didn't lose was my recovery. Even through it all, you know, my wife was stressed and there were some stressful points, you know, personally about, you know, the money, property, and prestige part. But I got all that back tenfold, bro.
Right.
It wasn't an if, it was a when. So that's the first part of what you said. You know, the second and third part is, you know, in terms of, you know, just dealing with people, and the key part of what you said, which is like, you know, identifying, you know, the introductions, right? And how you produce yourself and how you, I think that the natural part of all of this for me, and why we created the podcast, is to say to people, this is who I am today. And I'm so thankful that, you know, a Danny Boy or a Royce the 5'9" or Brandon Novak can share who they are today. But we can all openly and honestly at the end of each episode say, I really relate to what you said because I went through blank. And when people hear that, they go, wow, are you telling me that I have the opportunity to maybe find what you found? Because it goes back to that principle. This is a program of attraction rather than promotion, right? I want to attract people to the person I am today, not because of what I accomplished, you know, not because of Nas or Third Base or Echo Unlimited or Nuvo and blah, 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 all of those. I want to attract people today because of Michael Barron being who I am today, and help them find this even playing field where they can step by step, you know, get out of the active addiction part and get back to who they truly are and who they truly were, which is the most authentic version of themselves.
You know, I've never dealt with addiction myself. I have dealt with depression. It can be as paralyzing, especially when you may not have anywhere to turn or you feel like you don't have anywhere to turn. I was lucky in the sense that, you know, that never became an issue for me. But as someone who's been through that journey, that is from some people I know in my circle that have dealt with addiction. A lot of them have said that it begins with depression. It begins with feeling that you can't go anywhere to work it out. You don't want to burden your friends. You don't want to burden your family with the things that you're feeling and the things that you're going through. And that's where addiction starts, whether it's alcohol, whether it's drugs, whether it's gambling, as you mentioned before. I mean, you know, we know Craig
Overeating.
very public journey of Craig Carton, you know. So, you know, it's so important to do something like this so that people can access, you know, those, you know, even if they're not addicts or haven't started down that road, if they are depressed, if they are searching for something, would this podcast be helpful to them as well?
Yeah, that's a great question, man. You know, I think that a lot of the isms that we find in, you know, whether it's, you know, overeating, right? Because I now substituted my drug of choice for Dunkin' Donuts. You know, like, you know, and that's a big part of it, right? You know, like we all, and I mean, as human beings, we all say, you know, I can't cope, so I blank, right? I don't want to feel this, so I blank, right? So there's a significant part of recovery that deals with mental health, obviously. And we had this conversation recently on a show that we're about to be on, where can you identify alcoholism, drug addiction, gambling, any of the isms? Can you identify that with mental health? And the short answer is yes. This program, though, and this podcast is really about how people dealt with the collective, right? So I might have started out like one of the stories I think about, and again, I want people to see the episode, not have me tell them. But one of the episodes talks about one of the people that is part of this dealt with 9/11. He was a first responder. And he was an addict even before 9/11, but 9/11 certainly exacerbated it, right? And what 9/11 did for him as a first responder there when the towers fell is it caused him not only to numb the pain, but not deal with his mental anguish. And through his program, now he's 20 plus years clean. What he dealt with through his program was he was able to not only identify his drug of choice and use the program, but it also helped him find therapy. And a lot of people don't see that as a hand-in-hand coexistence, right? They say, well, I'm an addict, and that must be the reason I get depressed, or I'm manic, or I'm bipolar, or I, overeat, or I, overextend myself, or I'm a pathological liar, or I'm abusive, or any of the other character defects, which is what you what you want to identify. What I found for me, and I can only share this as Michael, is once I started to remove, and let's be really clear, I'm a neurotic Jew from Queens. I got therapy as a bar mitzvah present. It's like Jews and therapy. It's like, it's like a Big Mac and cheese, a Big Mac and fries. It just goes with it. Right. So I identified with mental health issues early on as a young man. What helped me kind of navigate my mental health issues and my drug issue was that I was able to identify the defects of character that would accelerate that mental illness or accelerate those feelings towards manic, because I was the kind of guy who I would go to sleep, everything be great. And the next day I'm manic and I'm buying $100,000 worth of shit and I don't know how I'm going to pay for it, right? Because that's how my manic manifested itself. And then when I got the bill, I'd be yelling at my wife and mentally and physically abusing her for allowing me to go do shit that she didn't even know I was doing in the first place, right? So in working a program, I was able to say, wow, that's a defect of character. And I need to work on that, not just in the program, but I need to work on that with my therapist. So that does work hand in hand. And I will say to people that might not be addicts, but want to hear about mental health through addiction and give you a chance to maybe look at some things. Yeah, I think it's a great opportunity. And I also just think it's some of your favorite artists as well, just from a fan place where you'll be able to hear Danny Boy from House of Pain talking about he had the biggest record in the world and he was living in an abandoned warehouse with no teeth in his mouth. And what his challenge, Royce the 5'9", being with the biggest rapper in the world and being miserable and wanting to kill himself. Just all these amazing stories of amazing people who openly and honestly share where they've been and where they are because they want to help people. Because ultimately that's the reason.
Right. And you spoke about it before, how, where we are now as a society, that talking about this stuff and being able to express what you're going through is easier. But I also think there's still a segment of the population that looks at addicts, looks at people who are successful and admitting and they have a problem as well. What is there to be so upset about? You got all the money in the world, you're on TV. I would love to be on TV. I would love to make that kind of money. What's the problem? Get over yourself. And it's like that low-hanging fruit that we talk about all the time in journalism. It's like sometimes it's just not that easy, and I think that do you find that, like, sometimes, not every piece of feedback or commentary do you get is positive. There's probably a lot of negative. There's probably a lot of that, like, what is there to be so upset about? So how do you deal with that when you get that from some of the folks that are engaging with you?
It's a great question. So there's a great saying in recovery and in sobriety and in any of the isms, that this is a simple program for complicated people, right? The simplicity of it is If you don't want to do drugs, don't do drugs. What the fuck is the problem? You don't want to do it, don't do it, right? Where it becomes complicated is how the brain is worked, how the chemical dependency works, and how the mind is wired. And that's the part that most people outside of my left and right ear don't hear and don't understand, right? It's very easy for anyone who's sitting on the sidelines to say, what are you complaining about? Just don't do it. I wish I could be that person. And I say that to people, I wish I could be you. But the fact of the matter is, I'm not you. And that you have that, good for you. You know, there's a term that we use for people like that in the rooms. We call them normies. You're a normie. My wife's a normie. She doesn't drink. She doesn't smoke. I can't use terminology in my house because she doesn't want to hear it. And you know what? Good for her, because it doesn't connect with her. You know, she's just happy to see Michael in his better and more authentic form, right? But she was also the person to push me into the rooms because she gave me an ultimatum. This has to stop or you lose your family. Well, I wasn't going to lose my family. And for me, and I can only speak for me, relapse is not part of my story. But people that relapse, I don't look at them and go, yo, what's your problem? Why did you knew what to do. Why'd you pick up? And there's another saying that I love in the program that says, you know, once you get recovery, it ruins using again. Because you know you shouldn't do it and you do it anyway. So to all those, and I don't call them naysayers, because I think that's just belittling their opinion, and their opinion has validity. This is a simple program for complicated people. You don't want to do it, right? It's like, yo, don't do it. It's not the way it works. You're not, what you're negating and saying that is, what kind of trauma did the person go through? What kind of mental anguish did they go through? What are they not dealing with as an emotional conduit to the using? What are they trying to numb? What are they trying to forget? What are they trying to forgive? What are they trying to repent? What are the things that make them use to the point of wanting to kill themselves? And to say that just basically means that you're not taking any of that into consideration. And that is the complicated part of a very simple program. And what I love about not only our podcast, but what I love about working in the steps is that I'm able to deal with that every day. Every day I'm able to say, you know what, that's a trigger. I'm numbing, I'm reaching for the donut. Why am I reaching for the donut today? What am I not dealing with? I'm not calling Mark back because I missed deadline. What am I not dealing with? You know what I'm saying? Like, what if, you know, I'm not talking to my wife today. She's pissing me. What am I not doing? I can honestly say that besides just therapy, working the program gives me those answers. And when I listen back to all of the episodes we did in the first season, all of the addicts, some of them have 6 months, some of them 10 years, some of them have 30 years. They all say the same thing. They all say the same thing, is that in working a 12-step program and going to therapy and identifying what my character defects were and seeing the rock bottom low, I was able to identify what made me use, why I continued to use, but why I decided to break the cycle.
You know, self-evaluation, I always talk about it being a critical life skill. You know, it's critical in almost everything we do. Let's be honest. I mean, when we say yes to things, when we say no to things, opportunities, social situations, you have to be able to self-evaluate to the point where I can't be around that because of A, B, and C. I can't be, or thinking that, oh, I can be around that, I can handle it, but then you can't, and that's why I think that what you're talking about, it's not just about wanting to stop. It's not just about wanting to improve or get better. It's really about executing those steps and really, embracing it and understanding who you are and what you're able to do. It doesn't mean limit yourself, but by the same time, know your limitations. What did Dirty Harry say? A man's got to know his limitations, right? So I think that the way that you're conveying this message in a non-judgmental way, really in a, come to the table kind of way, and let's work on getting better, is an invitation that is really, it's really a special thing. So talk a little bit about where people can access it, where people can listen to it, how can they reach out and interact with you if they want to? Where can people listen to this great podcast?
Yeah. I want to just address something that you said beforehand, and you talked about access, right? The thing that's the best part to me about the Breaking Anonymity podcast and my partner Kyle and myself, besides the experience and the multitude of experience we have, is at the end of each episode, we ask each one of the men, why? Why should somebody decide to go into a program? Why? Each one of them had a distinctly similar and different answer. It was so uniquely grounded to their experience. And what I say to people is, we are all the same in terms of our addiction if you decide to find help, but we all uniquely have individualized reasons to continue. Some of us are just there to go to drug court. We got to go to drug court. We got to do our 6 months and get out. That's your choice, right? Hopefully you hear something that makes you stay 7 months, 8 months, 9 months, right? The other part of it is that, when we ask these people, what should they know? Besides why, right? Why should they choose it? What should they know? Almost all the 10 in the episodes all said that you don't know what you know. And it's a famous saying, which is, you might know what brought you into the room, but you don't know what's going to keep you here. But trust me, we all earn the green chair and the free coffee, because that's what we're in here for. Whether you lost your license because of multiple DUI, whether you lost your child because you used and you were a terrible mother, whether you had whatever, cases. I was not one of those, right? I didn't go into the rooms because of losing money, property, or prestige. I was faced with a ultimate ultimatum that for me and how I was raised was not an option. If I don't go, I lose my family. I might not have been the best dad, but I needed to be a dad. That was my reason, right? So when people want to talk about access, they don't need this podcast. They can go to na.org, aa.org. There's a million Zoom rooms right now, whether it's in Pakistan, London, Spain, Brooklyn, Queens, Compton, and you'll hear the why in every one of those rooms right now. I will share with them that the reason they should listen to this podcast is because it's a condensed version of an entire share of people you might respect, might love, might not love, but know that they are on a path to continue their greatness because of where they stopped. They stopped using 8 years ago, 6 months ago, and the acceleration that they are on is because they stopped using. And anywhere you listen to your favorite podcast is where you can find Breaking Anonymity.
Well, look, as always, every time we sit down and we talk, no matter what we're talking about, it's just great. It's great to share. It's great to hear, all about this, stuff I learned about you that I'm just learning. Right. So it's great, and I really appreciate it.
No, it's my pleasure. But I do want to just call you out on something because you
Okay.
lied a little bit before. You said you weren't an addict and you're addicted to baseball. So I just want you to, again, and I just need you to be aware of your lie, that you're caught in a lie.
Okay. You're
And
right.
that you're, I'm Mark Healy and I'm addicted to baseball. You don't have to say it for me, but eventually you might get there for yourself.
I'm also addicted to spaghetti, if you want to,
Well,
if you want to say that.
that's a whole different ism. But 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 listen, I told you when my father died, he committed his life to the Rockaways. And I don't live there anymore, but this is, writing for the Wave and being a part of the Wave and being part of the community and the history of the Wave is, I just know my mom and dad be proud.
Yeah, they are, and I'm really, as always, it's a privilege to have you on our pages. It's great to have these conversations, and I really look forward to the next one, my friend.
Yep, me too, and thank you, and shout out to everybody in Far Rockaway. I'm going to see you soon.
Thanks, Serch. Appreciate it, buddy.
No, my